This is my 7.9 Andreini Serena. It's a kind of good wave mid-length that excels in larger surf, and it's got that whole entry. So it's got that classic ball bearing feeling that's super distinct and really fun once you get the hang of it. Hi, I'm Miles, and I really like surfboards. Welcome to the Magic Board Quest.
The Serena is a classic board from a legendary shaper. I'd always wanted to try an Andreini, so I was super stoked to pick this one up about a year ago. It's a pintail hull that surfs completely differently from all my other boards. I love it for this magic feeling it has as it rolls rail to rail in the pocket, and overall it's a great board to have in the quiver to mix it up and get new feelings on a wave. When it comes to rating, I'm starting off with a 6 on ease. If I'm being honest, it's a tricky board to ride. It's very flat, it surfs a little weird off the tail, but once you get the hang of it, it's super sick. And then for speed, I'm giving it a 7. This board controls speed more than it generates it, but once you do get it going, it's pretty epic. And then for turns, I'm giving it an 8. It's kind of a hard board to rank in turning because it's so unique. It's surprisingly agile from the middle of the board. Then for the board matrix, it's going kind of right in the middle. It's not the fastest and it's not the best at turning, but it's got a cool combination of both. This one doesn't have any dims on it, but it's 7.9, 21 3/4, and 3 1/8 thick. This board is based on a classic 70s single fin outline with the wide point forward and a pintail. It's also got a bit of hip in that tail, which is kind of cool. And the narrower tail fits better in the pocket and lets you lay it down in sharper turns. This is one of Marc's 2 really popular boards. It's kind of a more pulled in version of the Vaquero, which I hope to eventually review. When it comes to rocker, it's got a light S deck. It's pretty flat with a flip in the nose, but when you're riding it, it feels pretty darn flat. And I don't know how important this is, but the top of the deck is very round, especially towards the back. You can feel it in your feet. When it comes to the rails, they're pretty much standard 60-40. Maybe there's something here that I'm not understanding, but they don't feel super crazy to me. The rail does stay pretty sharp and hard out the back in a fairly thin tail. And like most of my boards, I'm running an 8-inch 4A here. You can also run the A-Flex, which is what Marc recommends with this board. And here's a closer look at that beautiful pintail. Starts out fairly flat out the back, but it pretty quickly gets into that belly, and you can see it pretty good here. And then, here's the rail as it really starts to show. And then as you get towards the front, you can really see the belly pushing out. That's that concave hull feeling. And then it basically goes all the way out the front. When I'm looking at the bottom of the board, I'm thinking about where it's pushing the water. And in a single concave, it's pushing it towards the middle. In a belly, it's actually pushing it out towards the sides. When you hear people talking about this ball bearing feeling, it feels like there's sort of a radius that the belly rotates around and slides in. And then thinking about how water flows over the board in 3 dimensions. The water hits the front of the board and then flows out to the sides rather than going under the fins. And then in the back, shoots straight out and gives you that projection. This makes riding a hull a totally different style of surfing. It's very slippery and slidey feeling where you steer from the middle of the board with your hips with more of your weight on your front foot, not your back foot. Coming from a modern single fin concave bottom, it defies what your brain thinks when you're used to concave. It can feel a little squirrely at first, but once you get it, it feels a bit like snowboarding and has this cool drifting feeling that I've talked about in other reviews. That hull feeling we've been talking about makes it super, super fun when trimming. It just has this really special feeling. I do think, however, with the belly, you end up pushing a little bit of water, which makes this board better at managing speed in big surf rather than generating it in smaller surf. But that's not to say this board isn't fast and doesn't find speed on the right spot in the wave. When it comes to turns, it's kind of trippy. You can turn really hard from the middle of the board. It almost feels like your feet are further back than they actually are. And I find when my foot is on the back, it's like extra squirrely, and it doesn't really like that. For wave selection, the Serena prefers a bigger, steeper, walled up wave. It could be a point break or a beach break. It just handles that powerful wave really beautifully. It really just likes to be on rail in the pocket. And I've said it a few times now, but it manages speed more than it generates it, which makes it feel really smooth and in control at speed. You certainly can ride it in smaller stuff since it's almost 8 feet, but it really comes alive in bigger surf. Anyhow, the Serena is a super rad board that's definitely worth checking out.
All right, thanks for joining me on the quest for the Magic Board. Let me know what other boards you want to see reviewed, and we'll see you next time.